All right. Welcome to the first ever episode of Grocery Stick Hockey, where we're not very good, but we're damn good at sitting on the bench. You can find me splitting the D in the forwards, baby. My name is CJ. I'm the host. I am your resident Grocery Stick. I'm here with my counterpart, Douglas Krasowski. Douglas, nice to see you tonight.
How's it going, buddy? Thanks for having me. Thanks for starting all this. I'm really excited to be a part of the Grocery Stick Pod and as a resident bench warmer myself, getting out there and doing something different.
I love it. Yeah, it's kind of the epitome of my whole life as I talked about doing this 4 years ago. I'm finally getting to it. So master procrastinator right here. Um, so yeah, I'm CJ. I live in the Colorado area. Grew up here. I was fortunate enough to meet this beauty on the other side of the screen here in Hudson, Wisconsin. Yeah, if you haven't heard of it, does not surprise me. We were roommates in the Minnesota Jail Hockey League because once you go there, you never get out. But yeah, some fun times. Played a lot of hockey with this guy in college as well. You can kind of expect a lot of conversation and hot takes, I guess, for myself at least. But just talking about everything that has to do with the NHL and college hockey. We're big college hockey fans around here. Go Sioux! That's my team right there. So yeah, that's get into more on who I am later down in the episode. But Doug, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I grew up in Illinois. And like CJ said, we played in Hudson. Um, and then he played more than I did. And then, I kind of went back to Illinois, and this kid asked me to come out to go to Metro State University of Denver, where we're fellow road runners. And
Go Birds!
um, from there, kind of just stayed on. And I think pretty similar. Like I've always had the idea of getting on a podcast and just talking about hockey and hoping that people care about what I say and think about. And so now it's just the time to do it. So excited.
100%. I'm NHL obsessed myself, and so I guess kind of what to expect. We've launched the website. Website's up there. So we've got blogs going on. I talked a little bit about the playoffs on there already. So yeah, just blogs, podcasts, and launching with the YouTube channel. So you guys go check that out. But yeah, we're just my passion really is hockey. At the end of the day, followed up by golf is a fairly close second. But yeah, just finding an outlet to get a lot of this stuff off my chest, so I don't look so crazy talking to myself in the car every day. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is yelling at my car radio because I never hear enough about hockey. So now I gotta just put my money where my mouth is and start talking about it, huh?
100%. And full disclosure to the probably handful of listeners, hi mom, hi dad. I'm a huge Avs fan, so I am biased to the Avs, but I try really hard to just look at them objectively. The rest of the league, I'll definitely, I'd like to kind of pride myself on being objective about it. But yeah, I'm wearing the Avs 2002 Stanley Cup shirt right now. Yeah, shameless Avs fan, big Nathan MacKinnon fan. Funny story behind that. I got in a Twitter argument back when we were in Hudson, Doug, right around the time of the draft. So I remember sitting on the back of the bus. We're going on like a 4-hour road trip, and we got to go play in the middle of Wisconsin in the Dells. And I'm tweeting back and forth to my buddy, and he's like, Seth Jones, who's from Colorado, who I played against in some summer camps. I sucked. He's obviously way better. He's a 94. So I was like, really also kind of like maybe a little like jaded, but I was like, no, he's not as good as Nathan MacKinnon. Do not take him. And my buddy's like, we don't need a forward, we need a D. And it almost ended a friendship arguing about Nathan MacKinnon and Seth Jones on Twitter. I'm 1,000 miles away. So yeah, huge Avs fan, and very, very happy that we were able to get one Stanley Cup in the last 20 years. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So when anyone's like, why do you think the Avs are better than they are? That's why.
Yeah, and you'll probably hear a lot of Blackhawks takes from me, being from Chicago. Definitely a Blackhawks fan. Um, and very close second would probably be the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'm I'm just in the dumps these last couple of years with these two teams, and that's just the way it's going to continue. So I'll probably be the negative one on the pod because my two teams just cannot get anything right. So,
Well, as we speak of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I have a very passionate take involving the Toronto Maple Leafs. So let's jump right into that, shall we? You're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. I'm going to ask the most obvious question. Mitch Marner, staying or leaving? What do you want? And then what do you think?
I think it's really hard. Where this team is so close to being truly a Stanley Cup contender. What I want would for him to stay on the team. I think he has good chemistry with the guys. I think it's a good locker room. I mean, I'm not in there, but I would assume.
Yeah.
And I think he's taken a lot of heat. And it always goes back to the type of player that you are. And if he's not going to be somebody who's going to go deep into the corners or do the extra things,
He's not. He's just not.
Yeah. And so he kind of needs to know how else he can contribute to the team. What I think is going to happen, if somehow they could get a really good draft or trade package, I think he's out relatively quickly. Truthfully, I thought it was going to happen at the draft, and we'll get into it. But nothing happened at the draft. So then it came to free agency, and you thought maybe sign and trade, maybe something. Nothing. So with those two big things happening, start of the season, he's on the team, and we wait for trade deadline to see if something else takes place.
Yeah, it's interesting you say you'd like to have him around. I think you're the only Leafs fan I've seen or heard in the last 6 months that has said that, which is not a bad thing. I, for one, I think his time in Toronto should be done. If I was looking at it from a Leafs fan perspective, he has all the talent in the world. He's an elite player. He is a top player in the NHL, and he'll always put up points, right? But when I'm watching that Boston series and I Toronto going to the Cup and playing the Dallas Stars, I thought they're going to do very well. But my point is, when I'm watching that playoff series, like, even he doesn't have to be a physical player to make a physical impact in the game. That forecheck where he gets out of the way of Charlie McAvoy in games like 1 or 2, he hasn't beat the puck by like 7 feet, stops, goes back around him, lets him beat him to the puck, and then doesn't even finish his check. And then it's game 7, and it's not overtime. It's right before overtime. And I posted this video to Twitter, but the puck gets dumped in and he's coasting to the corner. He probably could have beat the D to the puck. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Carlo or Lindholm. Could have beat him to the puck and then does a flyby. And I'm like, you have 15 seconds, 30 seconds left in the game. Boston is mailing it in, and his lack of forecheck turns the puck right up, and Marchand has a chance to score. Now, the Leafs D made him turn the puck over, but it's still a 3-on-2 going the other way. The D had to make a play. Those 2 instances alone highlight, I think, what some of his biggest issues are. Is he's just not hard on the puck. If you sit there and watch him, like, watch Matthews play, he doesn't always finish. He doesn't hit everybody, but he takes hits. It goes to the corner. He forechecks. And he does put up some hits, and he still produces offensively. So, like, I'm watching it, I'm like, it's just 2 different players. And, right, you can't expect Marner to change who he is, but you have to give a little bit more than that. Like, and I think just if you try to run it back with the same group of players outside of this contract, he obviously is going to play out the rest of the year. I don't think he's going anywhere till next summer. But if you bring him back after this next season and you try to run the same thing again, you're nuts. I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah. 21-22, played 72 games, got 97 points.
Yeah.
22-23, 80 games, 99 points. And then this last year, 69 games, 85 points. So you know that he could put up the points, right? And playoff hockey is a completely different beast. And that's what I'm saying is he has to figure out if he's not the physical player, then how else are you going to contribute? Because this playoffs, he only put up 3 points in 7 games. So
Yeah.
that's not going to cut it for them. But knowing how else he can, just figure out a way to get somewhat involved, I think that's what changes this team, to that Stanley Cup contender and being able to get out of the second round of the playoffs.
100%, 100%. And he, like you said, he even in the playoffs, his scoring, like it's not. It always everyone's scoring drops in the playoffs. So his does too, but I think it's just the intangible stuff. It's not showing up on the score sheet. And 5-on-5, he looks horrible on the playoff on the power play. He's great. So I don't know. I don't have to beat a dead horse, but I don't think he's going to be in Toronto much longer.
No.
So that's enough about the Mitch Marner stuff. So moving on to some other things here. Well, now I see what was going on. All right. Stanley Cup playoffs. Was this the best playoffs ever?
Yeah, I brought this up before. I truly believe that this was one of the best playoffs in recent years. And it comes up to a couple different things. You had, obviously Canada hoping that they get their first Stanley Cup in 31 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And some really good teams, great storylines throughout. But then it got to the finals, and the finals were kind of a letdown for me. You had Edmonton not really able to do anything those first 3 games. Then Florida kind of struggled the last 3. And then obviously game 7 where, with the last, 5 minutes, it was McDavid and Draisaitl for the rest of the game, and they lost all their juice. So I thought one of the best playoffs, maybe not one of the best finals. How about you?
I think it was up there as one of the best playoffs. I think we do forget how some of the earlier rounds were pretty boring in the first round, some of those series. But I think if it's not the best playoff, it's definitely the best playoffs had in the last 10 years. I think it especially out. I think the East was way more entertaining early on in the West, and I think that Winnipeg Colorado series was super entertaining. It was back and forth, some high scoring games. The Avs took over, but I don't think people understand how or people outside that watch that series like you and I forget that Winnipeg really, took it to the Avs for a little bit, especially in that first game. Like, yeah, Georgiev couldn't stop a beach ball, but they also made some good plays. So I think that it was definitely one of the best playoffs ever. It was exciting, and what I liked about it is the further in this playoffs we got, the better it got, and it's usually backwards. So I'm super super happy about that personally.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing was one of the last, just speaking about that Avs Winnipeg series. I mean, late in the season, wasn't that where Winnipeg came to Ball Arena and just absolutely whooped the Avalanche?
Yeah.
And you have, a couple weeks later, you're playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs round 1, and you knew that was kind of that preceding game. And I went into that thinking the Avs have no shot. Winnipeg was strong. Connor Hellebuck's an amazing goalie. But I just don't know what happens to him in the playoffs. He doesn't seem to have, that it factor, being able to pull it all together, to move that team to go forward. But, who's to say that next year can't be Winnipeg's year?
Yeah, exactly. Who says they can't? I mean, you can't predict the future, but I don't think it's going to be their year. I think this year is kind of a fluke, to be honest with you. Just because they, how do I put this? Like, I think they overachieved. Like they bought
Hmm.
into the where no one believes in us. You know, we decided to extend our players, sign some of our best players, Hellebuck and Shifley, and really push the envelope there and kind of go all in. But I could easily see them taking a step back. It's hard to get free agents. You have to trade. You have to overpay for trading. Um, and they didn't do much in free agency either. So um, I think they're a hell of a team. I think they'll make the playoffs next year. I think this they didn't overachieve by that much, but winning the Central Division, or they took second, they almost won it behind Dallas. I mean, I'd be surprised to see it, especially if where Nashville's moving. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely think the Central, for next season is going to be one of the toughest divisions in the NHL, just from, where teams are leaving off and where they're coming into. Um, and that's going to be a really interesting part. I'd also love to see, what's going to happen with the Kings. I thought, they were a team that was right there. You get the tough draw, and I hate the way that the NHL does their playoffs with
Yeah, me too.
the
It's horrible.
seeding. And so, you're a team getting in, and oh, congratulations, you have to go up against the Edmonton Oilers in the first round. Um, that's a tough task, but that youth getting that experience coming into next year, I think that's going to be really impressive. Um, and I think the West will be very, very competitive next year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm really curious to see what Edmonton does. I think it's huge they were able to move off Pierre-Luc Dubois. Um, and I do want to touch on the NHL playoff format, how horrible it is. But now that just kind of clicked into my mind, Rob Blake was getting so much heat for that, but I don't think he did anything wrong. I think he took a risk. If anything, he signed Dubois too long, but honestly, 8 million a year wasn't outrageous. And he moved off of him without eating any salary cap and took back a goalie at less money. Like, I don't think people were giving him heat for that. I think he did a damn good job just sucking it up, biting the bullet, and moving on. I don't think enough GMs are doing that these days. And you see the cap hell they put themselves in. Um, but yeah, they have a good year. Um, just like, I mean, the Avs, they had a good year and they ended up playing one of the top teams in the Western Conference in Winnipeg. Yeah, they beat them easy, but it, you know, the playoffs should be 1 through 8. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if you want to make divisions matter, then sure, give the division winners 1 and 2, and then 3 through 8 is just best available after that. So I wish they would go back to that because this whole division stuff is a disaster.
And I think the whole point of it, was to try to increase rivalries within the division. You see it all throughout. Um, Being in Colorado, being in Denver, every time they play a Central Division team, it's division rivalry night. They wear a different
Yeah.
jersey. Congratulations. They made more money off of that.
Ugly
Um,
jerseys too.
but outside of that, it's not doing anything. Um, I think back to the Blackhawks runs where their most hated team was the Vancouver Canucks because they had these great series against them. And those two games that you had against in the regular season, it meant more than, trying to play the team 4 times. And by the fourth time, you're just like, oh my gosh, these guys again.
Yeah.
Um, so, I doubted it's ever going to change, but it is something that I hope they go back to 1 through 8 and just figure out a way to have that going.
Me too. I that would make the playoffs better. We said this was one of the best of all time, but that wasn't because of the playoff format. I think you know back in the 70s and 80s when they did the division stuff, like guys didn't move around team to team. There wasn't social media and these fucking camps where they meet up in Florida and train together. Like, so they're all friends now. It's not, you want to create rivalries, you have to make meaningful games, like you said, and it's just not the same. But we can't control it. If we could, God help us all. Um, so Stanley Cup Finals was a wild series. I'll put it that way. Very interesting to see how it went. But you had some interesting opinions, so I'd love to hear them.
Yeah. Truthfully, with how I felt the playoffs were going, I was invested all throughout. I think once it got to the finals, those first two games, it's 7-1 Florida. And now you look at game three, where, it's a 1-goal game, it's close, but for, most of it, it was just like, okay, well, hopefully Edmonton wins one. Then they go to Florida for game five and it's all over. That obviously didn't happen. Edmonton made it a little bit of a series. And then you get to game seven and, pretty similar. It's a close game, but it was close in score. I didn't feel like Edmonton had a chance. And then you get to, Chris Knobloch. Is it an experience?
Yeah,
He rode the horses, that final 5 minutes, I think, of the game. And yes, you have to do it. You have three really good players in Draisaitl, McDavid, and Bouchard. But I mean, they came out of that timeout. You could tell that they had no energy left. And it was a complaint of Edmonton fans before that they felt that they were riding these two guys. And then all of a sudden, when the chips are down, you're going to go back to it. It didn't make sense to me, and it kind of lost everything.
yeah, definitely. And I think the timeout kind of hurt them. They got, like when you're playing, you have momentum, like you're tired, but you don't stop. So like it doesn't catch up to you as much. I feel like it made it worse. And they got Nugent Hopkins line out there with like 2 minutes left for 30 seconds. Like they should have got him out a little bit earlier. That line's been great all playoffs. They can control the puck. They're not scrubs. Like let them do a little bit more. Get McDavid some rest, because that was like 45 seconds left and he gets hit at center ice and he can't even get off the ice. He's so tired. It comes out he has an abdominal injury. So like there's more to it than that. It's just I can't say I blame him for riding those three guys all playoffs, but I feel like they just should have got him some more rest earlier on, like 5 minutes to that 3 minute mark, sit him down for a minute and a half, let him actually recover, and then, try and go back at it. Because you knew Florida wasn't going to try and go score. They're just trying to shut it down. So that one was interesting to me. But Connor McDavid winning the Conn Smythe, I think it was deserved 100%. Anytime you break a Wayne Gretzky playoff record, I don't care if you win it or not. Like you're the best player in the playoffs. And it's not a finals MVP like the NBA. It's a playoff MVP. I don't know who is more valuable to the NHL period than him. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I do think it's a little weird. In the grand scheme of things, it's happened what, 3 times,
Yeah.
where a losing player has gotten it, and it makes sense. I think obviously the NHL wanted to do it. It's just otherworldly what he did this playoff, but when it comes down to it, I'm totally fine if, hey, you didn't win it, and so there's somebody else.
Yeah.
I think the problem was that Florida didn't really have that, one player that you always think of as like above and beyond to get the Conn Smythe. They had Barkov, they had Bobrovsky, but nobody was there to take it. And so that always puts you in a tough position to say, okay, well, if there's three guys on one side and definitely one on the other, then that guy should get it. And I like the idea that it is through the whole playoffs, but come on, it's the Conn Smythe. It's a cool thing to have all the guys patting the one guy on the back to go get the trophy. I do think all the idiots online that were mad that he didn't come out to grab it.
Oh yeah, come on.
How about you go into that situation and tell me that you're going to go skate out there and go grab that trophy? I think, you see it in the NFL and the NBA when the guy's like pouting on the sideline or on the bench because he's watching the other team celebrate. NHL is different, man. You lose, you get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
And that's what he was going to do,
Well, and
because it is so hard.
he's also the captain of his team, and his team just lost. So like, they waited as far as you can without winning the Stanley Cup. They lost Game 7 on the road. Like he's gonna go be with his team. He's not just
Mm-hmm.
gonna go like celebrate his individual, you know, accomplishments. And I do agree. If it was Barkov or Bobrovsky, I wouldn't have been upset at all. I do agree. Like if you win it, you made a bigger impact. That's why I really think if it was anyone but McDavid, it should have been Bobrovsky. And I think had they not gotten blown out in a
Mm-hmm.
couple of those games, like Game 6, it would have been his trophy. Um, or get pulled 8-1 or whatever in game 4. I mean, I think he would have
Mm-hmm.
won it by a mile if it was closer games. But um, no, what McDavid did was impressive. I'm not gonna complain about it, and I'm with you. Like, don't like who would come out in that? Like, you really think you would come out? That just means you're super egotistical. If you care about getting a picture with your Conn Smythe trophy, like he doesn't give a fuck if they lost or if he won that.
Mm-hmm.
He could care less.
And it's a
And I
lose-lose situation, I think, because if he comes
yeah
out and then he doesn't smile, or he just
yeah
takes the trophy and skates off, then everyone's yelling at him about that. So, I give him props. I think it's a tough thing, to hear that. I'm sure, at some point maybe he'll enjoy it.
yeah
But I really want to see him win a Stanley Cup. That's what I was excited for.
yeah.
Um,
Me too.
and for it not to happen, like that, that hurt.
I was rooting for them as soon as the Avs got out. I wanted it to be, McDavid um, lifting it. It just be so good for the NHL. It'd be such a cool story. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's a like. I mean, ultimately, I think Crosby's the best player this last 20 years. Um, because obviously some of those greats came in the 90s. But I don't think there's anyone in the history of the world that's had more skill in a hockey rink than Connor McDavid. Like, and Avs fans always go back to the McKinnon McDavid rivalry, quote unquote, and like they're both unbelievable players. And McKinnon can really push that envelope and keep up in certain areas, but he can't do some of the things that McDavid can do. Um, he's just out of this world, and he legit may go down as the best player of all time. And unless he does, if he wins a cup, I think that'll happen. But I wanted him to win. I really did. When it went to Game 7, I didn't think they were going to win Game 7, just because they should have put themselves in a hole. They were not going to beat Florida 4 times in a row. Game 1, when they dominated the Panthers and lost, that's really where they screwed themselves. Because they split both games in Edmonton, so they just should have won one in Florida. That's what it came down to, in my opinion. Bobrovsky really stole it.
I think one of the interesting things was I heard from one of the Panther players after, and he just talked about how hard it is to truly get that game clinching Stanley Cup winning victory.
Yeah,
And it's funny because as I was watching, Game 4 and Edmonton's going to win, my wife, shout out Hope, who's going to be listening to this, turns to me and is like, "Well, do you think that Florida is trying to lose this so they could go win at home?" And I was like, "No, because like a number of things can happen." Lo and behold, there we are watching Game 7 as Florida goes on to lose the 3 games, but then it was that Florida player who comes back and says, "We knew that Edmonton's backs up against the wall now because there was the long break, which was ridiculous. How many days in between, and the NHL media just keeps going with, oh, Edmonton has the chance to finally, be the first team to come back down 3-0 and win a series, yada yada yada," and that gets into your mindset. And as you show up, you're there walking into that rink knowing, hey, we have a chance tonight to win the Stanley Cup, and Florida knows, okay, we got nothing else to lose. Like we either go down as the team that choked the hardest, or we just win the series and everyone kind of forgets about the rest. And they were able to do it. So it shows. And great job by Paul Maurice. He's a great coach and
Oh
someone that
yeah.
I appreciated seeing win the Stanley Cup.
I that was a silver lining is someone who wanted Edmonton to win. I mean, he's had some of the best quotes too. And my favorite one is like the one where he's talking about this sidetrack where he's talking about players' first NHL game. Like be nervous, just have fun, make mistakes. You can win all the Conn Smythes, all the Stanley Cups, Norris trophies, but you're never gonna get more than your first NHL game. So just go live it up. That one gives me chills.
Yeah.
But him, Barkov too. Barkov is such a good hockey player. He is so disgusting, and you watch people put up 80 plus points a year and they cheat the game over and over, and they don't always commit to defense. They get tired. They know that you know, they just play an offensive game. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing, but you never see Barkov do that. Never. He's always on the defensive side of the puck. What he did to Pasternak and Matthews, or not Matthews, excuse me, in the Zibanejad in New York. I mean, he just shut them down. They had nothing. It was insane. So he really showed out. So shout out to him too.
I think the other one, the crazy move that happens and they end up getting him, but Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, what a
Yeah.
guy, what a player. Probably that guy that you hate playing against, but love having him on the team.
Yeah.
Like that video where he fought, well, who was it, Pasternak in the Boston series, and
Yeah.
he's just chirping him, and Pasternak's telling the coach that he's going to go. Like, that's just the stuff that they love having him, and he was. I mean, he's still partying with the cup, so it's good to see.
Yeah. That was funny. Oh man. He just had Pasta so fired up. Man, I could not stand him for the longest time, and but you just came to realize that's just him. It's just a gritty
Mm-hmm.
player. He's got talent. He just pisses people off, and nothing wrong with that.
How would you feel if you're Brady Kachuk, though, being in Ottawa, kind of just trying to figure out where they're going to go, what direction they're doing, and you're just seeing your brother down on the ice winning the Stanley Cup? That one's got to sting just a little bit.
I would be so frustrated, and not because he's out winning a cup. I'd be like, I'm watching what it takes to win a cup. I'm watching firsthand what they're going through, what they're willing to do, and my locker room doesn't have that. And I know Brady Kachuk has that. I'm not. He's a dog. I would be just pissed off because deep down he has to know that Ottawa's never going to be there. They're just not.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'll acknowledge that, but they're never going to be there.
No, no.
So we were talking about predictions and who we had making the playoffs. At the start of the year, I had the Buffalo Sabres making the playoffs. I had Detroit
Okay.
really pushing for a wild card, but I was sold on Buffalo making the playoffs. I thought that they really came a long way last year, and I don't think I could have been more wrong about something. I also had the Panthers. I'm trying to find the tweet in the blog of my picks, but I'm pretty sure I had Florida missing the playoffs. And my reasoning was not because they weren't talented enough to make it. It was because they were so hurt when they lost the cup to Vegas that I didn't think by the time all their guys came back that they would be able to make it after that. They obviously did, and they went on to win the fucking Stanley Cup. But I got to eat that one. If you dig hard enough, and I will, I'll find it. But yeah, I'm 99% sure I had Florida missing the playoffs, and also had Buffalo taking their place in that position. And I couldn't be more wrong. I could not have been more wrong.
Yeah, the Florida one's always going to be a tough pill to swallow there, CJ. They were
Yeah.
4 points away from tying for the President's Trophy. Um, and so, maybe next year's your year to get it. Um,
Listen,
I,
Montour had surgery, missed part of it. I think Ekblad didn't start the season. Kachuk, I don't think he started the season. So I was like, there's a lot to come back from. And I was like, they're going to put themselves in a hole, and it'll be impossible to come back. But they crushed it. They were so good all year. They're the best. They were the best team in that league all year long.
um, Buffalo. I still feel like they are just going to be this team that is kind of stuck in the middle ground. Maybe they get the chance to sneak into the playoffs. But it just doesn't seem like a team that has that true, I don't know.
What's their
Just
identity?
yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Like they have to find a way to get somebody to move somebody up. I thought it was going to be Tage Thompson. When he came over and I feel that team kind of just again being stuck in the middle ground, and not really able to get out of it.
Yeah, I in the trade for Bo Byram too, like they trade Casey Middlestat, and I don't think they really had much of a choice. I don't think they wanted to pay him what he was going to be worth, but what the Avs gave him, they certainly could have paid him on a bridge deal. He was leading their team in scoring, and they got another offensive left-handed defenseman, which they don't need. I I don't even know what their identity is. Like, who are the Buffalo Sabres? They're going to miss the playoffs by about 5 to 10 points next year. They're going to get a mid round to high to later, like top end of the first round draft pick. Like, they're just going to rinse and repeat. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they can do. You know, they've tried to bring in veteran players. They tried to bring in Jeff Skinner, who tore it up for the first part in Buffalo. Like, he wasn't bad. Had Jack Eichel. They ruined the Jack Eichel situation. And I still can't believe they tried to push him through that, which no need to rehash that. But that I was so far on Jack Eichel's side, it's not funny. But like, they've just made so many mistakes. Like, what are they going to do?
And I think the hardest point too is as you see all these teams, who's their goalie?
That's the one area I have confidence in them.
Really?
Yeah,
Who?
they've got Devin Levi, who was really good in
Okay.
the minors, and then I can't remember their starter's name. I'll look this up in a second, but
Yeah.
he played. I think it's Ukko Pekka.
Okay.
Um,
So
I
he's
think,
still an RFA,
yeah,
and they have James Reimer, the suitcase of the NHL.
yeah, I can't blame
So
him. I would
clearly,
stick around as long as I could.
so clearly signing James Reimer, they're not sure. Um, I'm also looking, it looks like they have Dustin Tokarski too, who I thought, was kind of had that cup of coffee with Montreal.
Yeah,
But that doesn't that doesn't show me you have a number one goalie. That doesn't show me that you know who your goalie is. Because two of the guys are still unsigned.
yeah.
The other one, and then you don't have like that one number one goalie. And so that's where I think it's just going to be another 80, 90 point year. And Buffalo fans are putting themselves through the tables.
uh, they need someone to step up because I think they have really good goaltending prospects. Like I was saying, you know, Luukkonen, I think can really. They need to sign him, right? But they've got him and Devon Levi. Levi's young; he's 22. He just left college. He's going to play in the minors next year, and I think that's okay. I think they'll have Luukkonen starting, Reimer backing up. Tokarski's going to play with Levi in the minors in Rochester, and I have confidence that's the brighter part of their future. But looking at on defense, I mean, Rasmus Dahlin making $11 million. Is he better than Cale Makar? Is he better than Quinn Hughes?
No.
I don't think so. Makes more than they do. Of course, he's in Buffalo, so they can afford it. But then Owen Power's making 8.3. That's $1 million less than Cale Makar for similar time left on their deals. That is disgusting. I'm speechless at that. You got to have players, but goddamn.
Yeah. Well, and I think, part of it is, as you kind of brought up at the start, it's that, repair that they have to do. And, with what happened with Jack Eichel, these guys, and, unfortunately, it's going to be kind of the stain for Buffalo and something that the players are always going to worry about. So how do you get them to come? Well, we'll pay you some more money. And I'm never going to, complain that a guy is making too much or too little. It's on the ownership and the GM who's giving that contract. Guy's going to sign whatever he needs to sign. And that's up to them to figure it out.
Yeah. For the record, I don't blame the players. I'm just sitting there like, if you're a fan and a GM of that team, like, and you're like, where are we struggling? Like, some of these contracts you're handing out, like, I know Cale Makar took way less than he could have made. I get that. But he also set a bar like, I'm the best defenseman in the NHL, and this is what I'm making. Adam Fox, like, he's making less. You know what I mean? And they're playing to win Stanley Cups, and your team you've got no forwards making over $7 million, and you got 2D. One of them is, Dahlin's an unreal player. Owen Power's not worth that money. They don't have another shutdown defenseman. Like, I think that's the biggest area is like, who's going to stop the other team?
Yeah. I think that's, and, that's probably the tough part is the defense, but then it even goes to forwards too. Jordan Greenway, he's good, but where does he fit in the lineup? I don't see out of their forward lines a true, number one, number two line. I think it's a lot of guys who, if they were on a great team, you're looking third, fourth line guys. And that's where things get obviously difficult. And so it's going to be interesting in Buffalo.
Very interesting. Dark times. I feel for those fans, man. I really do. Moving on though, the NHL draft. Hold on. Let me pause this for a sec.
Yeah.
So the NHL draft, Las Vegas, the Sphere. What do you
got? This is a hot take. I didn't really like it. I thought it was a little over the top. I do think the Sphere is cool. I do think that there's more that could be done with it. But with what sounds like the NHL is going to start doing is not having all the teams there as they do, and so with that, what is it going to look like next year? Bettman's just going to be standing on a stage with a huge NHL logo behind him and some kid walking up after giving his jacket to a showgirl. That is weird for me. I definitely think it's, a great marketing piece. It will probably be fun for all the fans. They'll probably get more people there. But I just thought in the end, if it was the award show, great, that's cool. But NHL draft, I don't know, just a little weird for me.
Fair enough. I did not watch the full draft. I followed along on Twitter. I think the visuals they did on the stage with the sphere and all that technology stuff was really cool. I think they could have done way more. I think they were playing it really safe, which is right on
Mm-hmm.
par for the NHL. But yeah, they're not the NFL. This centralized draft, like I think the teams would like it more, honestly, the GMs and stuff, because they're not. I feel like we would see more trades go down because you see like take Yzerman and Sakic, they're just catching up, and then you see the GM from Toronto is like, oh, what are they talking about? You think they're like, and I think there's too much of this high school gossip stuff going on and people watching everyone's move that they're not comfortable to pull the trigger on anything. But having it the sphere, I don't think it's going to be a long time solution. It's rumored to be in Denver next year. That was before they decided to decentralize it. So no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but good chance it's in Denver All Arena next year. And if that's the case, I'll be there. But I'm with you. The Vegas thing is the award show. It's great. But the schedule, you got Game 7. A few days later, you had the draft. And a few days later, you had free agency. And like, it's just too much. It's just too much.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the running thing for years and years and years, the NHL schedule. And it seemed like it's progressively gotten worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine, like, as some of these guys you're finishing up and then you have a month off and then you're kind of back getting ready into hockey shape and October's here and then games are starting up. And somehow we're going till the end of June. Like next year, could we see a 4th of July Stanley Cup game?
Seriously, though.
Who knows? You know?
Yeah.
So I think that that's something that, really needs to be looked at because it's crazy at the end of the year. But I do think, in terms of the actual draft, the actual players who got picked, this was a draft, even with Macklin Celebrini's name, and for months and months and months, it was he's going number one, he's going number one.
Yeah.
He's a great player. I don't know if he's the generational talent that we've seen in past drafts. And I think that that's what this draft really lacked was that, the rest of it was just kind of, all right, well, we like this guy, so let's pick him. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how these players actually pan out.
I'm with you. The Capitals draft pick, he goes back to school. Decides, not to push it. He knows he's got a good team in BC, and I think that's smart. As much as the Capitals want him in the NHL, he made a big decision. I do think part of it is the teams are pushing these players that are college draft picks to sign because they don't want to lose them. And Macklin Celebrini playing in San Jose from Vancouver, I think there was less likelihood they were going to lose him. But how bad would it look with how bad they've been? He goes back to college, number 1 overall pick, and is like, I'm just going to become a free agent. So I think there's a lot of pressure the teams put on these kids. And if I was them, I 100% would go to the NHL. Wrong decision, right decision. I know. I wouldn't say no. I'd be like, you're telling me I can play in the NHL next year? Where do I sign? So I can't say I blame them, but I'm with you. I think this draft is going to be secretly really deep, but we don't know who's going to do that. I think it's going to be a surprise in a couple of years for us. I'm with you.
I think one of the people that I was really excited about for the Hawks to actually pick was Z Bouillon, and going off of guys signing, he's going back to Denver to increase his game, and I think if it's 1 year, I think if you get to year 2 and the kid's still not signing or he goes back, now you got to worry. 1 year is not going to change anything. Especially when you're San Jose, because he's got to learn, the NHL game, and you're going to throw him out there with some guys, like you see it with Connor Bedard this year. He had a great year, but what happened, 10 games in? He got injured because no one really was able to kind of explain, like, oh yeah, in juniors you could toe drag through everybody and score a ridiculous goal. In the NHL, you're going to get hit by a 230-pound defenseman who's going to break your wrist. So
Yeah,
don't do that.
yeah. And the hit that broke his jaw was clean. Sorry to say to Hawks fans out there, but it was unfortunate.
100%. Yeah.
Don't want a guy like that out of the league, but yeah, and that kind of leads us into free agency here. Some big signings. The Hawks went to work, and I think they were one of the winners of free agency. To be honest with you,
I struggle.
really,
I struggle with what our direction and our thought is. Um, I do have to say I love every single move that they've made. Um, it just goes down the list of bringing back some of their guys. And obviously making moves for Bertuzzi, Teravainen, Maroon, um, even Alec Martinez, who's not wearing number 27 anymore. So Jeremy Roenick can keep that number. Um, but I just think this is a team that is still going to struggle.
yeah,
And
I think so.
so with a couple of their other players that they have that they brought, like Frank Nazar, Landon Slaggert from Notre Dame, these are going to be guys who, yeah, they get the opportunity to play in the AHL, but is that going to help them in the long run? Where if you don't make some of these other signings now with your number one player of Connor McDavid or Connor Bedard, you have. I wish they had Connor McDavid. You have other guys who are coming up and growing with him, and you're growing that team that they had in the past that made my childhood so great, and I got to rub it in CJ's face all the time. Um,
Yeah,
and so now it's just okay. Is our foot in the door to go for it and try to make the playoffs? Or are we just hoping again to sign some guys that we could trade for draft picks? Because it's looking, like that might be the case. And who knows what you get with draft picks when you kind of take the time to grow some of your own.
and I think the benefit is they kind of allow them now to not be forced in the NHL with just because Bedard's there. I mean, they didn't lock themselves into cap hill. Biggest contract they handed out was 5.5 a year for 4 years. So I think short-term deals um, is really going to pay off. Warren Brossoit, 2 years at 3.3, like that's money. Um, and do they have actual NHL players now to play around him? I mean, Bertuzzi,
Mm-hmm.
Teravainen, they're not elite NHL players. They're good NHL players. Um, Patrick Maroon, he isn't the biggest heavyweight, but if anyone touches Connor Bedard, he'll make sure that he's in their ear or taking care of it. I think what they did was really smart. They're not going to overperform. They're not locked into these big, heavy deals. I mean, they still only have, with those signed, they only have, 70% or 80% of their cap hit. Like they still have cap room.
Mm-hmm.
Um, 6.6 million in projected cap space. So I don't know. I think subtly they did a really good job plugging some holes without screwing themselves over. But the other big winner, I think Washington did a great job kind of retooling on the fly. I don't think they're a cup contender. I think TJ Oshie's going to retire, which is heartbreaking for me. He's my favorite player. But they're really going to try and get OB 45 goals next year to break Wayne Gretzky's record and make millions of dollars on that. But I think they did a good job plugging some holes. One of the losers, I think the Avs were a huge loser on free agency day. There wasn't a whole lot they could do, so I say that kind of tongue in cheek because Landeskog's going to come back. He's supposed to start training camp. Now I'll believe that when I see it, but that's $7 million coming off the books. They're hitting the books again. Nichushkin, they cannot terminate his contract. No smart GM is going to trade for him. So you got to prepare for that 6-something. So they're kind of stuck, but they didn't get better. Subtly got a little worse, letting Sean Walker leave. I think that hurts on defense. You fit the Avs mold unbelievably well. I think they're going to end up trading Sam Girard, which, I mean, he's a good player, but that's $5 million they could use. And when you have Cale Makar and Jonathan Toews, you know, Anthony, I think Devon Toews, excuse me. We've got the other Toews, not related. You have two of the best defensemen in the NHL. Like, you can, it sucks. Like, I don't want to lose Sam Girard, and I hope they don't trade him, but I do see that coming. Another huge loser, in my opinion. Please tell me your thoughts are, is Anaheim.
Yeah. I think it was a kind of loss for them. We talked about it before, but what are they doing with Trevor Zegras? Like, what is the plan? Why are they looking to move him? And then a team that I kind of thought was going to take that next step, and then you look and it doesn't look like they tried to improve or make any difference in their team, and that's weird.
Yeah. I'm looking at their roster right now. I mean, Troy Terry is really good. They got him signed through 27, 28. They have Alex Killorn signed through 26, 27. Good NHL player. He's getting older. Zegras, I think they're trying to trade him because he's got this is a gut. I have obviously no inside information, but I feel like the only reason they're trying to trade him is he has so much stuff going on outside of hockey in Southern California, and they have an old school GM. I don't think he's a fan of that. I think that's a big reason. But what do I know? I mean, they have a decent roster. They got Cutter Gauthier. That's a steal. Kid's going to be nasty. Kind of whiny, in my opinion, how everything went down in Philly. But he's good. But their defense is really interesting. They got Mitnikov, Zellweger, who are really good prospects. John Gibson doesn't even want to play there. I don't know what they're doing. They have $21 million in cap space. They didn't make any big signings. They're above the cap floor by $1.2 million. Like, for someone who's I'm kind of speechless as well, because like, you have all this money, you have really good talented players. You could plug some holes with some other really good players. You know what I mean? I'm not saying Stamkos wanted to go to Anaheim, but they had more than enough money to pick someone up like that. You're telling me like Stamkos and Cutter Gauthier and Trevor Zegras and Troy Terry, that's not a scary forward? Like, that doesn't make a difference?
And I think, there still are some names that are unsigned. So you have to take, a second. It's weird. I think we all wait for, July 1 and think by July, 5 that free agency's over, because we've seen the last couple of years that guys sign, pretty quickly into that first day. There still are some guys that are unsigned. So, maybe they have an idea. You also think once the season starts, there's chances for trades. And so, maybe they're the teams that are looking at, Daniel Sprong as a possible placement, and Marty Nikas as somebody else who could come in there. But I just think it's strange that they would just be so quiet when, they're a team that is needing to do something.
Yeah. They've been stagnant. They've made good draft picks. I totally agree with that. But you make a good point. They could fill some holes, some of these later UFAs. One team I'm on Puckpedia right now, because Cap Friendly decided to sell themselves out. don't hate him for it, but the Oilers sneaky dominated the offseason as well, right after losing the cup. Um, I mean, one move too. This wasn't even a signing. They go out and trade with the Buffalo Sabres and get an elite offensive player who's a top 10 draft pick. And then they go ahead and lock up a bunch of their other players, key players. I mean, they weren't big signings. They're Corey Perry, Connor Brown, re-signed. Just very, very smooth. Getting Jeff Skinner, Adam Henrique, Victor Arvidsson. I mean, they bolstered up front. Then they got Lavoie in that trade. I mean, sneaky, really, really good.
I saw that, and I didn't even know that it happened, but one of the guys that they did sign,
Savoy, excuse me, is Matthew Savoy.
And one of the other guys that they signed, defenseman Connor Carrick, he's a Illinois kid. I kind of grew up skating with him, and he was really nice to us. So I was glad to see him, get another contract, and hopefully, he can play well on the AHL team, but maybe get a shot with the NHL team. And so, I've kind of been interested to follow his career and excited to see that. But yeah, I think one thing, that just shocks me, the Corey Perry signing, getting another contract. He kind of had that tough start to the year with Chicago and moving into Edmonton. Do you really want the guy on your team that's lost what, 4 straight Stanley Cups? Like, they got to start thinking about, some positiveness, and he might not be that guy.
Very true. He may not be. The thing that I go back to is it's 1 year, 1.15 million. They could bury him in the minors. They weren't going to buy him out on a year. They could trade him, and give away a second round or third round pick to, some team like Anaheim. Send him back to Anaheim, give them a pick. They got the space. Obviously not trying to win based on what we just talked about. So I think it's a very low risk, situation for them. The one thing that really surprises me is Vander Kane has mentioned he's not. I think some of the underlying rumors that are coming out is he's not happy. There's some tension there. What do they do with that contract? Because that's $5.25 million almost in AAV. And they still need to sign Philip Broberg. He's an RFA. Evan Bouchard's got 1 year left. So they do have to, plan ahead a little bit for their cap situation. But I'm curious to see what they do with those guys. But back to Corey Perry, I think it's low risk. He was serviceable player. You can plug him in and out of the lineup. I don't think he's going to complain about not being in the lineup. But, what he did in Chicago, I have no idea what happened, but obviously wasn't good. So I am surprised as well that they even signed him in the first place, but seemed to work out for him this year. So maybe they just are hoping to run it back.
Yeah, I just think about that past, and I'm not superstitious, just a little stitious, and having that guy, when you're there trying to win the cup, something would tell me, maybe we'll just pass for a second, because you got a bad track record right now. But hopefully, it would be really cool to see, next year Connor McDavid lift the cup and then give it to Corey Perry and let him lift it and then ride off into the sunset like he did at the Winter Classic when he got the 5-minute major.
That's so funny to watch him take the walk of shame all the way back. We'll wrap it up with one more team. I want to go back to the Maple Leafs. They signed Max Domi, 4 years, $3.7 million. I feel like he took a little bit of a discount there to stay in Toronto. Love to see that. How do you feel about their offseason so far?
I think the one interesting piece is what the plan is with Mitch Marner. They lost some players, that were UFAs. You bring in a couple more guys, but you kind of have this glaring mark. You saw the picture of Marner in the coffee shop talking to the coach. I think I saw one tweet that said first time Marner's ever been in the corner. So,
Very true.
that is something that I thought would be addressed. And so, now you're kind of coming in and it looks like we're going to roll with the same team. And so, I know we talked about this at the beginning, but that has me just kind of confused. And it goes back, Samsonov left. And so now you have to try to figure out, is Matt Murray the guy? You signed Stolars. Who is your goalie?
I think it's Joseph Wall starts next year.
Yeah. But for Toronto, I think that's the weirdest thing is they've built, around and haven't thought okay, we kind of need somebody to stop the puck and make sure that that person can really come down to steal a game for us. And it's just oh, well, Matthews will go out and get 4 goals. We'll be fine.
So I have an idea for you. We just were talking about both these teams. Mitch Marner shouldn't be in Toronto anymore, in my opinion. If I was a GM, I would try and get him out. But he's in full control, and I respect the no move clause. Mitch Marner to the Anaheim Ducks. Give back Zegras and or Gibson. And you're gonna have to send a pick and another player. You're gonna have to make it worth Anaheim's day, but they're getting Mitch Marner. And you're getting back Zegras at a lower cap hit, possibly getting a good goalie. I don't know who you send with Marner. Maybe it's 2 first-rounders. I mean, they're not going to give up 2 elite players for nothing for a 1-year rental. Maybe it's a sign and trade. Maybe it's just a 1-for-1 type deal, but Zegras for Marner?
I don't think I go. Yeah, I think I'd rather go Marner for Gibson and roll it that way. I like Trevor Zegras, but I just think it's going to be
only
tough.
31, by the way, and he signed through 26, 27. So you have 3 more seasons at 6.4. So if you move off from 10.9, you're freeing up almost $4 million in cap space and getting a bona fide top end number 1 goaltender.
Yeah, and you're rolling it with probably Matt Murray, who has that experience. I think I would rather look at going with a goalie than trying to find a forward. I think they're good with their forwards. I really like the Ekman Larson trade or signing, to kind of bolster the defense a little bit. And so I would look for a goalie. And if anybody from Toronto wants to call me, please go ahead and we'll figure something out.
Hey, I don't know, man. That there may be something there. The Ducks have 21 million. They're not worried about his cap hit.
No,
they might give him 13 million like he wants. Well, that'll do it here for episode 1. Unless there's anything else you wanted to bring up, Doug.
I think I had one more question for you.
Yeah.
Vegas Golden Knights at the draft. Logan Thompson gets traded.
Oh my God.
Do they not care about their players at all?
No, they don't, first and foremost. They definitely do not. And I shout out to him for staying because he stayed to do the signing. He said, well, people are here to see me. I'm going to sign, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just don't understand why they would do that, put him in that situation.
Exactly. And for people who don't know, so I think it was day 2 of the draft, Logan Thompson was going to do an autograph signing at the Sphere, for NHL fans. And he got traded that day from Vegas.
During the signing, pretty much.
Yeah. And I saw, messages and tweets from people who were there who were saying that, Vegas fans were very nice and respectful and saying that they, wish he stayed. But just one of the craziest things that this team just is so new, but could not care about their players. Um, and yet still finding players that want to sign and play there. Because I would be concerned that, I'd be doing a book signing and get traded mid book signing.
Yeah, and like they make a big move for Max Pacioretty too. He was gone quick. It turned and burned him. Yeah, it's all business in Vegas. So I don't know how else to put it. They owner wanted a cup within like 6 years and he got one. So I mean, it worked. I don't know.
Probably
Crazy
had
to think about.
none of the original misfits there anymore. Carrier signed away, Marchessault out.
I think that was it. They're all gone now.
Insane.
Man, we'll jump into Vegas next week. There's a lot to unpack there, but yeah, that's gonna wrap us up for episode 1 of the Grocery Stick Hockey Podcast. For all of you that made it through the first hour listening to us rant back and forth, we appreciate you, and we will see you guys in a week.
Later, everybody.